Revealed, 3 sinister caving experiences that expose haunted secrets and terrifying mysteries. Kelly stared at the dark entrance of Ashwood Caves, her heart racing. Every local tale she'd heard weighed heavy on her mind, stories of isolated souls swallowed by darkness, faces never to be seen again. As she turned to her 2 children, excitement shone in their eyes, unaware of the lurking dread creeping through her. All she could think was that these caves, with their extensive tunnels and infinite shadows, held more than just adventure, they concealed nightmares. With each step inside, the air thickened. The entrance, once inviting, became oppressive. She shivered at the strange shadows flickering on the cave walls, figures that moved like echoes on the edge of her vision. Distant whispers slithered through the air, twisting into an unsettling symphony that sent chills racing down her spine. It was just the wind, she told herself, but a chill of something more sinister wrapped itself around her bones. Then came the first unsettling encounter. As they ventured deeper, she noticed a flicker of movement at the cavern's far edge, a shadow darting away, evading the light. Her breath hitched. Her instincts screamed danger. "Kids, stay close," she called, but the thrill of exploration kept them a step ahead, blissfully ignorant of her rising panic. Minutes turned into an eternity as they pushed forth, the light of day slowly fading, swallowed by the cave's inkiness. The walls tightened, pressed in by the suffocating darkness that oozed out from every corner. She heard it then, a low, cryptic laugh echoing hauntingly through the chambers like a phantom whispering secrets long buried. Before they knew it, they stumbled upon a horrifying scene, a shrine cluttered with flickering candles and old photographs of missing townsfolk. Kelly's heart lurched at the sight of familiar faces, neighbors, parents from the school, all grinning innocently in the pictures set among grim offerings. The realization hit her like a punch to the stomach. These weren't just long-forgotten stories, these were lives that had vanished right under her nose. "Mom, what is this?" Her son's voice shattered her thoughts, pulling her back from the edge of terror. Her unease morphed into raw panic. How many had vanished without a trace, and what did it mean for them? Before she could formulate an answer, the candles flickered dramatically, casting wild shadows that danced around them. Darkness pooled thicker, as if the cave itself were drawing them in. Kelly felt eyes watching, lurking. Something was very wrong. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let us continue. In the shadowy depths of the cave, panic morphed into terror as Kelly spotted fleeting figures moving along the walls. The closing darkness felt tangible, twisting around her family like a predator scenting its prey. Memories of public assurances from local officials about safety began to twist sour in her mind. Familiar faces now appeared as masked expressions of fear and deceit. As dusk enveloped them, the cave felt more like a hunting ground than a place of discovery. The shadows lurked closer, whispers grew louder, and time felt suspended in a thick blanket of dread. The sinister, familiar laughter echoed again, a terrifying ripple that suggested they weren't just being watched, but hunted. As one last candle flickered out, plunging them into suffocating darkness, Kelly's breath caught in her throat. This was deeper than just a localized horror. Here, below the surface of their quaint town, lay something far more sinister. Her protective instincts ignited, but at what cost? Would she confront the lurking menace, or would she keep her children oblivious to the dark truth woven into their community? As the overwhelming shadows closed in, one question remained: would they unravel the mystery, or become the next faces on the shrine? Kelly's heart raced as darkness fell entirely around them. The last flicker of light was extinguished, leaving an unbearable silence that pressed against her chest. She could hear her children whispering to each other, the innocent excitement swiftly morphing into something fragile, anxious. It was a sound of hope, but it felt thin, unraveling in the dark like a fraying thread. "Mom?" I can't see, her daughter's voice trembled, breaking the binds of night. Kelly reached for her, fingers brushing against small, cold hands. They needed to move, to escape this stifling pit, but every sense in her screamed to stay put, to not provoke whatever hidden malice lurked beyond their sight. Stay close, she nodded, trying to inject assurance into her voice, but it cracked slightly. A low murmur echoed through the cavern, slithering around them, blending with the sound of her heart pounding. It felt alive, breathing around them, then came a shuffling sound, heavy, deliberate. It brushed against the stone, a grating sound that raised goosebumps on her arms. What was that? Her son asked, voice barely above a whisper. Kelly was at a loss for words as dread pooled in the pit of her stomach. Just an echo, she tried to convince herself, but even she couldn't believe it. Her own mind was working against her now, filling the void with faceless terrors. She took a step forward, urging her kids to follow. The darkness clung to her, a palpable entity that threatened to swallow them whole. As they moved deeper, each footfall echoed, ricocheting back, distorting into laughter harsh and mocking. It scratched at the skin of her sanity. Suddenly, the ground beneath them shifted. A low rumble reverberated through the cave, dropping like a weight against their hope. The walls groaned, as if the cave itself protested their intrusion. Kelly's breath quickened as she clutched her children's hands tighter, the warmth of their tiny palms grounding her in their shared terror. Maybe we should go back, her daughter suggested, panic coiling around her words. I don't like this, no. We can't go back. Kelly insisted, forcing a calmness that felt like brittle glass in her throat. They had to find the exit, to unravel this mystery. But the cave seemed to twist and shift around her, a monstrous labyrinth with no intention of letting them escape. Sweat trickled down her brow as the laughter grew louder, sharpening into cruel taunts that echoed off the damp walls. Images of the shrine surfaced again, the faces of the lost. Could they become another part of that mounting collection? The thought filled her with chilling despair. As they stumbled into yet another chamber, a dim glow began to pulse in the distance, flickering like a heartbeat. Kelly felt the pull of it, part fear, part curiosity. That has to be an exit, she half-sobbed, dragging her kids toward the light, but as they got closer, the glow shifted, seeming to retract like a hesitant flame. Her stomach knotted. Hope wrestled with panic, but as they pushed further, the space opened wide, revealing a dreadful tableau. Beneath the dim light, they faced mirrors. An endless stretch of reflection stared back at them, but these weren't their own, they were the faces from the shrine. Grinning, lifeless eyes blinked back, mouths opened in silent screams, and she could feel her children shudder beside her. Time staggered, froze. Kelly's heart thundered in her ears as the laughter crescendoed, drowning them. They were not just in danger, they were already trapped in a mirage of their own making. As the surface of reality wavered, a transparency clung to existence. Between the laughter and the reflections, something wicked was waiting. Could she save her children from the horrors that lurked in these reflections, or would they vanish too, stepping into the unknown? Just then, a hand pressed against the glass, cold, skeletal. A blur of blackness surged toward her. The scream caught in her throat, and she knew in that moment of terror, it was hunting them. Would they be able to swipe back through the fabric of fate, or become lost echoes of the Ashwood Caves? The skeletal hand paused just inches from Kelly's face, the fingers hovering eerily against the glass. Her breath turned shallow, panic clawing at her throat. In that chilling moment, the reflections shimmered, their laughter twisting into something sinister, a mockery of her horror. We have to move, she gasped, pulling her children back, forcing them away from that insatiable darkness. But the mirrors shifted, expanding the distance between them and the way out, trapping them in a web of glinting glass, each reflection blurring in and out like the flicker of a dying bulb. Mom, what's happening? Her son cried, clutching her leg, eyes wide with confusion and terror. It's okay, honey. We need to stay together, she urged, though her heart was hammering against her ribs. The laughter grew, echoing their despair, intertwining with something else, a low, guttural growl that shivered through the cavern. It felt like a predator circling its prey, whispering promises of terror in the dark. Kelly's instincts kicked in. "This way!" she shouted, leading them to the left, each footstep feeling more precarious. The reflections twisted grotesquely, grinning wider as if taunting their futile struggle against the inevitable. A jagged fragment of broken glass suddenly jutted out from the wall, sparks slicing through the dim light. The shadows around them flickered, revealing faces that seemed to melt into the glass. Those who had come before, perhaps? She dared a horrified glance, each face familiar yet wrong, their features twisted with anguish and despair. Was one of them her own? No. Focus. She yelled at herself to push back the swirling dread. They needed to get out or they would end up just like them, lost and forgotten. She turned, her hands trembling as she searched for a path through the shifting reflections that beckoned like sirens of the deep. When she saw it, a small, dark crevice at the edge of the chamber. It was barely visible, but the shadows there felt different. They seemed to beckon, as if offering a sanctuary from the nightmarish mirage surrounding them. "Over there!" she barked, scrambling toward the opening with her children just behind her. The laughter grew frantic, thrumming with anger. The sound ricocheted, shifting from mockery to an almost pleading tone. They inched closer, the darkness clamoring around them as arms flailed from the mirrors, reaching, grasping, desperate to pull them back into their eternal torment. "Hurry!" Kelly urged, her voice raw and strained. She threw herself into the crevice just as a hand smacked against the glass barrier behind them, splintering in a shower of shards that rained down like malevolent confetti. Breathless, they tumbled into the narrow passage, but instead of relief, they found themselves plunged into another darkness even thicker than before. The sound of grinding stone creaked above them as if the cave itself was waking from a deep slumber, irate at their intrusion. "Mom?" her daughter whispered, her voice a thread against the suffocating silence. "Stay close," Kelly urged again, though uncertainty haunted her every word. They crawled deeper into the passage, trying to quell their panic, but every instinct screamed for them to turn back. The walls seemed to close in, suffocating their hope, each push forward feeling more like a descent into hell than an escape. Then, in the darkness, a faint whisper broke through, words that sent icy fear skittering down Kelly's spine. "You can't escape, you belong to us now." The crushing weight of dread tightened around them. Would they find a way out? Or had they just stepped deeper into the cave's insidious embrace, forever entwined with the lost souls? As the shadows shifted and curled around her, Kelly couldn't shake the feeling that something malicious was waiting just beyond her grasp, something hungry. What awaited them in the deep, unyielding blackness? Kelly's heart raced as the whispers clawed at her sanity. The darkness pressed in, thick like fog, wrapping around them with every inch they crawled. They were moving further into a void that felt impossibly alive. The air was stale, suffocating, heavy with the weight of forgotten screams that seemed to echo in their ears, overlapping with the dangerous laughter from the mirrors they had left behind. "Mom, I'm scared," her son whimpered, his voice barely piercing through the suffocating gloom. "I know, sweetheart, I know," she replied, fighting the tremor in her voice. The sensation of dread was a living thing that twisted in her stomach, urging her to flee. Yet with each passing moment, she felt her resolve weakening like the flickering flame of a dying candle. Beneath them, the rocky ground shifted, as if it wanted to consume them. The crevice felt narrower, closing in like the maw of a great beast. She brushed her fingers along the walls, slick with moisture, and recoiled at a sudden chill that shot through her arm. It felt like fingers, it felt like a hand. "What was that, Mom?" her daughter breathed, her little body quaking beside her. "Nothing, just keep moving," Kelly urged, suppressing the urge to look back. The shadows seemed to coalesce, forming shapes that danced tantalizingly in the corner of her vision. Were they there to comfort, or to deceive? As they pressed forward, a sharp sound echoed ahead, a faint rattle, like chains dragging across stone. The darkness paused, holding its breath, giving way to another whisper that slithered around them, "Join us." "Mom!" her son cried again, and she felt him shudder with panic. It triggered something primal in her, igniting a fierce protectiveness. Her thoughts raced, battling against the suffocating darkness. They were not just running from something, they were running towards something, a possibility of safety, of light. Faster! She commanded, scrambling through the passage as her heart hammered in her chest. Then, she caught a glimpse of flickering light off in the distance, a soft glow cutting through the veil of despair. Hope surged through her. "Look!" She pointed. "We're almost there." But as they moved closer, the glow warped and twisted. Now it looked like a gaping hole, an eerie promise that danced just out of reach. And from the depths of that light came the unmistakable echoes of laughter. Not mocking now, but merry. "Come and join us." "No!" Kelly yelled in defiance. But the laughter reached out, wrapping around her like ivy, pulling at her mind. Everything within her screamed to turn back, yet the light pulsated with an allure she felt powerless to resist. "Don't look at it!" she yelled, frantically glancing at her kids. "Keep your eyes down." Her words fell on deaf ears as her daughter lifted her head, drawn into the brilliance. In an instant, Kelly felt the tremor beneath her feet increase, the walls shuddered violently. The chains rattled louder now, angry, furious. "Mom! No!" Her son cried, but it was too late. The passage exploded with blinding light, and a screech filled the chamber, a sound not of this world, spiraling through the air like a banshee, and just like that, the fissures in the walls began to pulsate, spreading wide, threatening to swallow them whole as the laughter twisted into shrieks of rage. "Run!" Kelly screamed as the ground beneath them split, the darkness shifting and stretching like a hungry beast finally revealing its true form. With no way to turn back, they dashed toward the light, their silhouettes bathed in its glow, fleeing the unseen horror that loomed just behind. As they lunged forward, the world fractured around them with a deafening roar, a collision of darkness and blinding light, and then, silence. What awaited them on the other side of the light? Would they find salvation, or another trap set for the unwary? The silence hung thick, a heavy blanket that pressed against them, confounding their senses. Kelly blinked rapidly, disoriented, as if waking from a fever dream. Her heart was still pounding, and she could feel the fear coursing through her veins like ice. "Mom?" Her son's voice sliced through the quiet, shaky and small. "Here, baby." "I'm here," she replied, her voice emerging from the hollowness around them. She fumbled in the darkness, desperate to find her children, her fingers brushing against their clammy skin. Relief bloomed briefly in her chest, but it was quickly quashed by the feeling of something sinister lurking just beyond their vision. As they gathered themselves, the light around them struggled between life and death, flickering weakly, suffused with a spectral glow. They stood upon uneven ground that felt more alive than solid, pulsing like a heartbeat. Kelly glanced around, her instincts prickling. She was struck by the absence of laughter, now replaced by an echoing stillness, as if the world had been paused in a grotesque tableau. "Where are we?" her daughter whimpered. The little girl clung to her mother's leg, her breath coming in short, anxious bursts. "I don't know," Kelly admitted, eyes scanning the periphery, trying to absorb the undulating shadows. The landscape was bizarre, shifting and warping. Figures skittered just outside her vision, their movements quick and erratic. In that moment, the air crackled, charged with electric tension. A hair-raising shriek broke the silence, a chilling discord that rippled through the atmosphere like a scream yearning to escape. Kelly's skin prickled with goosebumps. "And Mom?" her son stammered, voice cracking. "Stay close," she urged, pulling her kids to her chest, shielding them as if they could somehow block out the horror that loomed around them. Through the din of silence and fear, the warm flickering light transformed. Shapes began to emerge, hazy outlines of distorted faces, mouths twisted in rapture, as if they were feeding off their fear. The brightness dimmed, revealing themselves as grotesque apparitions soaked in despair. Kelly took a step back, heart racing. "What do you want?" she shouted, her voice trembling. They grinned with hollow eyes, flesh twisting around sockets, the laughter from the mirrors echoing faintly in the background. "Join us," they sang in a chorus of distorted voices, their voices intertwining like a sickly sweet melody. "No!" Kelly yelled, clutching her children tighter. "We won tea." But the ground shuddered once more, and the once vibrant light flickered and waned, threatening to extinguish entirely. "Come play," the figures called, their tones now insidious, tugging at the very fringes of Kelly's sanity. "Don't listen. We have to find a way out." Kelly screamed, feeling the urge to pull her kids into the oppressive darkness. They turned to run, only to find a barrier rising from the ground before them. Shadows danced along the newfound wall, the imprints of hands clawing at the surface, trying to break free. Was this another trick? Another game to ensnare them? The echoes of laughter reverberated back, punctuated by the soft screeches of tortured souls. Something terrifying loomed just beyond her line of sight, coaxing her to yield. In that moment, her resolve hardened. "We're not staying here." She gripped her children's hands tighter and began to push against the barrier, feeling the pulse beneath her palm. But the shadows weren't done with them yet. As they leaned into the wall, a deafening roar erupted from the far side. The air crackled wildly, and the edges of her vision began to swirl and shift. "Hold on!" she shouted, feeling the oppressive force around them thrust toward the gate. Just as they seemed to gain ground, a ghostly apparition lunged from the darkness, mouth stretching wide, destined to drag them into the void with it. What awaited them beyond the barrier? Would they find a way out, or would they succumb to the shadows? The shadowy apparition lunged, a vortex of darkness aiming to wrap around them. Kelly pulled her children back at the last second, adrenaline surging through her. The entity screamed, a sound so vile it clawed at her insides. She could feel the darkness pressing against her skin, like thousands of tiny fingers seeking purchase. "Go!" she ordered, her voice hoarse but firm. Without waiting for a response, she spun around, grabbing her children tightly as they plunged forward into the chaotic landscape, full of grotesque figures watching with hollow eyes. The barrier flickered in her peripheral vision, almost seeming to melt against the pressure of the shadows pounding against it. The walls pulsed as if they were alive, groaning under the weight of the figures beyond. Was it even a wall, or just another layer of fear, another trick designed to keep them trapped? "Mommy, Mommy!" her son cried, his small hand trembling in hers. "Keep running. Don't look back." Kelly shouted, wishing desperately for a flash of light, a door, anything that heralded salvation. They dashed ahead, but the ground twisted beneath them, shifting like a living creature. Tentacles of darkness reached up, grabbing at their ankles, pulling them closer to the earth. Each step they took seemed to fuel a growing hunger from the shadows. Kelly felt weight pressing down on her shoulders, 1,000 eyes boring into her, 1,000 whispers weaving through her thoughts. "Do you hear them?" her daughter gasped, eyes wide with terror. Kelly halted, panic rising like bile in her throat. There was a cacophony of wheezing breaths echoing around them, vile murmurings wafting through the air. "They're trying to tell us something," her daughter said, mesmerized. "No!" Kelly yelled, her voice reinvigorated by fear. "They're trying to trick us." But it was too late. Lured by the dreadful intrigue, her daughter turned her head toward the shadows surrounding them. The whispers were now distinct, weaving tales of despair, promises of freedom, and threats of hunger. Kelly yanked her back, almost losing her balance in the process. "Don't listen. Focus on me." But the whispers wrapped around them like vines, tightening their grip on her mind. She could feel them creeping in, coiling, promising hope if she just listened. Suddenly, a blinding flash of light tore through the darkness, illuminating the grotesque figures that danced around them. Kelly squinted, shielding her eyes. The light revealed them more clearly, twisted forms, bodies bent and warped with despair, hands clutching at nothing, faces frozen into expressions of horror. The light flickered again, and the figures seemed to moan and sway, hungry for the warmth that came from it. "Look, Mommy! They want us!" her daughter squealed, a dangerous glee filling her voice. No. No. They want to eat us. Kelly screamed, her fear morphing into a desperate howl. Distracted by the shimmering light, she felt the solid ground give way beneath her feet. It wasn't just a trick, it was a trap. As they fell, the world around them spiraled, and a sinking dread crushed her heart. Terrified screams filled the air, merging with the echoes of laughter as they descended into darkness. A deafening crash signaled their arrival in an endless cavern filled with shadows. It felt alive, breathing around them. The moment they hit the ground, voices surrounded them, clamorous, raving lunatics whispering secrets of unspeakable horrors and hidden truths. Each word wrapped itself around Kelly's mind, suffocating her resolve. Join us, be one with the darkness. The figures chanted as they closed in. I want to let you take them. She screamed, desperation coursing through her. She had to save her kids. There had to be a way out. As she gathered her breath, the shadows lunged closer, their faces shifting, their mouths spreading into grins that revealed rows of jagged teeth. Kelly prepared to fight back, steeling herself for the final push. But just then, a chilling howl pierced her resolve. Mommy! Look! Before her stood a massive portal formed of intertwining shadows and shimmering light. It pulsed and throbbed, an invitation to escape. But which was the truth? Which side held salvation, and which side promised damnation? With her heart racing, Kelly stood frozen, poised between escape and the terrifying embrace of the unknown. Would she trust the darkness or defy it? The howls grew louder, and as the shadows began to close the gap, time slipped away like sand through her fingers. The shadows writhed, pulsing, almost alive as they latched onto Kelly's ankles. She could feel their icy breath brushing against her skin, chilling her to the bone. The cavern echoed with 1,000 tormented whispers, each one clawing at her sanity. Mommy! I'm scared. Her son whimpered, clutching her leg, his wide eyes reflecting her own terror. Stay close. Kelly shouted, her thoughts racing. The grinning faces of the shadows filled her with dread. She had to make a choice, and fast. The portal loomed ahead, its shimmering edges promising safety, but something deep within her screamed to run the other way. Mommy, it's so pretty. Her daughter exclaimed, entranced by the flickering light. No. Don't look at it. Kelly yanked her back just in time, but the shadows were unyielding. They lunged forward, hissing and spitting malice, their forms shifting into grotesque shapes that mimicked her children's fears. The portal throbbed, the light flickering and swaying. It beckoned like a siren, whispering sweet promises as it across the cavern. Join us, little ones, will give you all you desire. Just trust us. The voices dripped with seduction. When she saw it. Just behind the portal, a shivering outline took shape, a figure that felt achingly familiar. Mom? Kelly's heart skipped a beat. It looked like her mother, but twisted, darkened, her eyes devoid of warmth. Come home, Kelly. It's time, the figure crooned, extending a hand veiled in shadow. No. The word burst from Kelly's lips like a fireball. She fell to her knees, gripping her children's hands tightly, the heat of the moment sweltering in the chill around them. Stay away from her. She roared, the desperation transforming into raw fury. You're not my mother. You can't have us. The shadows recoiled momentarily, hissing like scalded animals. But the portal pulsed, and the voice grew louder, insistent. Come home, belong with us. Without thinking, Kelly twisted around, searching desperately for a way out. The cavern stretched endlessly, the ground slick and shifting. Murmurs brushed against her eardrums, a chaotic symphony urging them to surrender, to join the others trapped in this nightmare. Her breath quickened. Mommy! Where do we go? Her son's voice broke through. Up! She screamed, pointing to the jagged ledges that loomed above, partly hidden in shadow. I can't. Her daughter whimpered, trembling. Just climb. I'll lift you. She hoisted her daughter towards the rough stone, the dark eyes of the shadows tracking their every move. The howls morphed into screams of anger, the figures pulsating with rage. No! You can't escape! They shrieked, their voices intertwining with the echoes of madness. With every inch climbed, the pull of the portal beckoned further, its light a threatening reminder of their plight. Kelly hoisted her son next, grunting with exertion, fear now knitting her brow. Her children were climbing, but time was slipping. The shadows were regrouping, focusing, ready to charge. Just as she made it to the first ledge, the darkness surged, a wave of fury crashing toward them. Kelly's heart raced as she held on tight, their hands gripping the stone as the entities closed in. Then, above the chaos, she heard a different voice, calm and piercing. They can't have you. You are stronger than they know who. She screamed back, the shadows rushing towards her like a tidal wave. Suddenly, the figure that had mimicked her mother stepped into the portal, and a bright light erupted, illuminating the cavern. Mom! No! Kelly cried, but it was too late. The entity vanished. An agonizing roar filled the cavern, fissures cracking through the stone as their escape began to crumble. Run! She shouted, urging her children forward once more. They darted ahead, fear sharp in every step, but the darkness was relentless, snapping at their heels. Would they escape its clutches, or would the shadows drag them back to eternal despair? The fissures widened, and in that moment of chaos, a figure emerged from the abyss. A real figure, not a shadow, a savior? Or another trap? Over here. I can help. Kelly froze, uncertainty clawing at her chest. To trust or distrust was the choice before her in a darkened world of lies. Her heart thundered as she watched the figure approach the portal, the final moment dragging her under its terrifying weight. Would they stumble toward salvation, or would the shadows claim them all? Mommy! Her son's voice cut through the cacophony, a shard of panic threading through her already frayed nerves. She glanced back at the figure, whose features were obscured by the shadows swirling around the cavern. Please! We need to go. Kelly urged, her instincts screaming to move. The darkness howled, eager to drown out the fragile whispers of hope that echoed off the cavern walls. Mommy! I can't see you. Her daughter cried, tears streaming down her face. Hold on to my legs. Keep climbing. Kelly shouted, her heart pounding with fear and adrenaline. She looked up, spotting the jagged ledges just out of reach, glistening with moisture and despair. Rooted in indecision, that figure flickered in and out of focus. It was closer now, the face momentarily illuminated under the glowing aura of the portal. Trust me. The figure insisted, a strange mix of urgency and familiarity in their voice. Yet, Kelly felt a chill dance across her skin. The shadows slithered around, ready to consume anything brave enough to linger. With every scream, every whisper of fear, Kelly's resolve hardened. We don't know who you are. She yelled defiantly, kicking dirt toward the advancing shadows. In that instant, the figure lunged forward, breaking free from the oppressive darkness. It was a man strong, resolute, eyes fierce and determined. You can't stay here. They thrive on your fear. You are their prey. We have to go. She echoed, her own voice now standing against the howling shadows that seemed to close in further with each precious second. They're angry now, the man shouted, his urgency slicing through the oppressive air. Climb, Kelly. Now. With a surge of adrenaline, Kelly reached for her children. Get to the ledge. I'll help you. Everything became a blur. She grabbed hold of her son first, lifting him up onto the ledge where he scrambled to safety. Next, she hoisted her daughter, glancing back at the man who held his ground against the encroaching darkness. Go! He urged, eyes burning with determination. But the shadows rippled with rage, twisting and unfurling like caged beasts. Please, help us. Kelly shouted, fear and resolve clashing in her chest. She reached out one last time, seeing ephemeral strands of hope sifting through the air. Trust the light. Follow it. He bellowed as the shadows lunged forward, dark tendrils snatching at his legs. The moment hung fragile, a taut string ready to snap. With a deep breath, she turned and began to climb, the jagged edges biting into her palms. She could feel the presence of the shadows thickening behind her, yearning for their moment of victory. "Mommy!" Her daughter's voice was a plea steeped in terror, echoing through the cavern. "I'm here." Kelly called desperately, scrambling upward, but the darkness clawed at her, wrapping tendrils around her ankles like icy chains. The figures hissed and cackled, frustration boiling into a malevolent uproar. "Kill the light." A voice called, drowning out the others. "Join us or suffer." "No." She fought against the creeping dread. "I want tea." With a final Herculean effort, she hoisted herself onto the ledge and grabbed her children, pulling them close. The ethereal light of the portal flickered insistently, cutting through the smothering gloom. "Go." "The light." The man's voice rang out, but the shadows were unruly now, feeding on the fear they deplanted. "Jump." Kelly shouted, the words leaving her lips in a surge of pure necessity. They leaped together, diving into the radiance of the portal. As they crossed the threshold, a shockwave crashed against them, the darkness screaming in anguish. They landed in a realm of blinding light, gasping as the shadows writhed against the barrier, beating against it, shrieking in fury. But their victory was tenuous, a temporary reprieve born of lingering dread. Was that enough? Her son gasped, tears glistening in his eyes as he looked back, breath choking on the terror that clung to them. Kelly's heart raced as she looked around. They were safe for now. But she felt it stalking them, lurking just beyond their sight, its memories weaving through her mind like a silent predator. Where are we?" Her daughter stammered, clutching her mother's side. "I don't know," Kelly whispered, the weight of uncertainty settling in the pit of her stomach. "But whatever it is, it's not over." Behind them, the shadows screeched, the barrier shimmering. To which depths had they escaped? Or was it merely a prelude to something darker still lurking? "Mom?" Her son whimpered as she turned her back to the portal. But a new sound echoed hushed whispers that crawled like fingers over her skin. Shadows flickered at the edge of her vision, and the light began to ebb, dimming. Something's coming in that moment, dread coiled in her gut. And then, she heard it: voices. The shadowed whispers were not gone. They were drawing closer, their intentions clear. It was far from over. What secrets lay ahead, waiting to reveal their grotesque truths? The air thickened as the whispers crept closer, wrapping around Kelly like a suffocating shroud. The brilliance of the portal flickered, pulsing erratically as if sensing the malignant presence approaching. "Mommy," whispered her daughter, squeezing tighter against her. Kelly could feel her son's small body trembling, a mirror to her own rising panic. The whispers grew louder, distinct words battling against the confines of darkness. "Leave now," before the voice shifted, sliding through the cracks of light. The shadows writhed, forming indecipherable shapes that clawed at the barrier, desperate to break through. Had they merely jumped from one nightmare into another? The thought sent a shiver bolting down Kelly's spine. She turned her gaze toward the opaque abyss behind them, so many unanswered questions gnawing at her resolve. "Stay close to me," she warned, her voice trembling yet firm. "We need to find a way out." Her heart thudded in her chest like a drum, urging her feet to move, but every instinct screamed that they were being watched. The shadows beckoned, whispering promises that clawed and dug under her skin. "Come, children, we will keep you safe." "No," Kelly shouted back. The words were laced with fear, but it was also defiance, a desperate stand against whatever malevolence drew near. "You aren't safe. You're not real." But reality blurred, the light was receding, and the whispers shifted, swirling around her mind like a tempest. Figures began to materialize, silhouettes obscured by the fading brilliance, their eyes glowing like embers amidst the smoke. "Mum!" her son shrieked, pointing at one shape, a figure bound in flowing shadows that shifted and flickered like fire itself. "Stare not into the abyss," it crooned, its voice dripping with malice. For the abyss stares back. It tilted its head, the features rippling like water disturbed, and Kelly's heart seized in terror. "We're not afraid of you," she shouted, trying to instill courage within herself and her children. But the sheer weight of dread pressed down on her, a smothering darkness that made each breath harder to take. The glow of the portal paled further, as if fighting against the encroaching shadows. The voices coalesced into a haunting chorus. "Join us, it's easy, free your mind, join us." Their tone turned sweet, as if promising something wonderful, beckoning with open arms. "No. We're not joining you." Kelly felt her knees almost buckle, the gravity of it all threatening to pull her under. The darkness cried out, 1,000 despairing voices wailing in unison. They were vying for her children, craving innocence that seemed to wither under their hungry gaze. A figure lunged forward, closer than before, a twisted smile stretching across a face that was almost familiar. Kelly's breath caught. "Help us." "Help? There's no help here." The voice rang from everywhere and nowhere, echoing through the dimly lit chamber. "You brought your fear, and you brought your children. They are our sustenance. Join us." Kelly felt a surge of rage. These creatures were feeding on their terror, corrupting innocence. She could not let that happen. "I will not let you take them," she screamed, a fire igniting within her. With every ounce of defiance she could muster, Kelly took a step back toward the portal, urging her children to follow. The light flickered dangerously behind her, a weak heartbeat struggling against the shadow's pressing weight. "Jump!" But the shadows elongated, reaching, clawing toward the children, desperate to snatch them from her grasp. The darkness raged, howling with discontent. "Mommy!" her daughter cried out, panic threading through her voice. Just as Kelly felt the shadows tugging at their clothes, for Johnnycoat arms appeared before her. They glowed faintly, holding the promise of light. "This way." The strange man from moments before emerged from the dark, his voice steady, guiding. "Trust the light," he urged. With no time left to hesitate, she squeezed her children's hands, pulling them into the embrace of brilliance. Whatever lay beyond, they would face it together. But as they surged forward, the shadows erupted violently, screaming in rage, desperate not to let go of their latest catch. The man's figure glided closer, but so did the darkness, surrounding them in a chaotic swirl of terror and anguish. "This is only the beginning," he warned, eyes glinting with urgency. "They will come for you again." In a desperate leap, they plunged into the shimmering light. The world melted away, replaced by blaring white, suffocating silence. Kelly's heart raced, an echo of unnerving dread settling in. Had they truly escaped? Or were they plunging deeper into a sinister unknown? As the light dimmed, shadows began to materialize again at the edges. This battle was far from over. What awaited them in this light? Was it a refuge or the final trap of the darkness? The blinding light enveloped them, and for a moment, Kelly felt an overwhelming rush of warmth. It was a stark contrast to the suffocating chill they had just fled. Clasping her children tightly, she braced herself for what lay ahead. Would the shadows dare follow them into this realm of light? Or would they find respite from the haunting darkness? As the glow began to dim, a firm sense of reality settled over them, albeit accompanied by a residual anxiety. They stood in what appeared to be an open field, the sun casting soft rays upon the ground, painting it gold. Kelly blinked, disoriented by the beauty that surrounded them after the monstrosity they had escaped. A gentle breeze whispered through tall grass, and wildflowers danced, unbothered by the terror they had just encountered. It felt unreal. "Are we safe, Mommy?" her son asked, his small voice trembling, looking up at her with wide, cautious eyes. I think so," Kelly replied, though uncertainty prickled at her. They had faced shadows that thrived on fear, and she couldn't shake the doubt that loomed. Could a paradise exist where horror had been so real? Look! Her daughter pointed. Sparkling droplets of water glistened under the sun's embrace, cascading from a stream that wound through the field. Can we play there? Kelly hesitated, the echoes of the darkness still clawing at her consciousness. Yet, the innocence in her children's voices ignited something within her, a fierce will to protect, a dawning realization that strength lay in unity. Yes, she replied, relief flooding her voice as she broke into a smile, let us go play. As they approached the stream, the sound of the water brought more clarity to her mind. It breathed life into the overwhelming sense of dread. They found themselves laughing as they splashed each other, the joy filtering through like sunlight piercing the darkest clouds, but even as they played, the shadows whispered on the edges of Kelly's heart. What had they truly escaped? Suddenly, a cold gust of wind rustled the grass, erasing the warmth. The laughter faded, replaced by a sinister hush. Kelly's instincts kicked in, heart racing as she turned. The shadows from the cave flickered in and out of sight, writhing around the trees, just beyond the enchanting light. Their ghastly forms melted into the landscape, hungrily watching. They're here. Kelly gasped. Panic surged through her, urging her to gather her children. We need to go. Mom, no. Her son shouted, eyes wide with horror, confusion etched on his innocent face. But it's pretty. We can stay. Stay? In the shadows? Kelly said fiercely, determination weaving strength through her voice. No. They're not just going to let us be. We need to stay on the move, we have to believe in the light. With that, she clasped their hands tightly. The glimmering light ahead beckoned, promising safety but also tinged with uncertainty. They sprinted toward it, hearts pounding. Each step felt heavy with the impending dread lingering behind them. As they crossed into another patch of light, a clearing with white petals dancing in the breeze, Kelly turned to face the darkness. You will not take us. She shouted, conviction tremoring through her voice. She realized now that the shadows thrived on the fear they instigated, and in an act of defiance, she vowed to share that strength with her children. Suddenly, the dark whispers surged forward, almost overwhelming, but something shifted within Kelly. She squeezed her children's hands tighter and found her voice rising above the tormenting murmurs. Together, she declared, accessing the fierce love she felt for her children. Their eyes met, flickering hope ignited in them as they focused on the light ahead. With a final burst of resolve, she surged toward it, her children joining in unison. The shimmering light enveloped them, drowning out the wails of the shadows. The darkness shrieked, the voices of despair fading as they pushed through rainbows of brightness, and then silence. Kelly collapsed to the ground, her breath coming in labored gasps as her children tumbled beside her. They were isolated in tranquility now, a sanctuary forged through bravery and unwavering love. What now? Her son whispered, his voice fragile, but no longer afraid. Kelly smiled, wiping the sweat from her brow. Now we live, she whispered back, knowing that the battle had shifted. They were no longer victims, but warriors woven into something greater, unbreakable bonds born out of fear, transformed into love. This moment, this shimmering light they had overcome. The shadows would remain, waiting, but they could never extinguish the light they now carried within. That was theirs forever, and in that knowledge, they found freedom. As they sat there, the sun setting in the distance, painting the sky in burnt oranges and soft violets, Kelly realized something monumental. She didn't just want to survive, she wanted to thrive. They would build a life now, one where shadows would fear the power of their light. Like the heart of a phoenix rising from its ashes, they would soar, and in her heart, she whispered a promise, they would never stop fighting for their light, no matter what lay beyond. Now, it's your turn. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button for the algorithm. Your support makes a difference. Flood the comments with your reactions and theories about this wild conclusion. Don't wait even one more second, share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this ending. Be part of the journey.